Hello and welcome to Tracy Momi Reads. I am back again with another video. Today, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Instead of a book review, I'm going to be talking about books that I read that I feel have some of the best plot twists. For those of you who may not know what I mean, a plot twist is when you're reading a book and, it's going a certain way and you have in your mind how this is about to play out, what's about to happen, and then bam, the author switches things around and it throws in something you never saw coming. But instead of it being a bad thing, it is an incredible thing. It's like something that makes you go, what? Tell me more, and I think for most readers, especially if you're reading books in the mystery, thriller and suspense genres, that's a requirement. You want there to be a plot twist. You want there to be something that has your jaw on the floor that you never saw coming. It's the reason why most people read books in those genres. Not necessarily, I think, in romance books. If it's a book about Dick and Jane and their life and their marriage and their ups and downs, you are mostly looking for happily ever afters in those kind of books. I mean, I don't know that I've read too many romance books that have plot twists, but at the end of the day, you know what you're gonna get, or at least what should happen. But with the suspense, mystery, thriller genres, you just never know. So in no particular order, I'm going to go down my list that I have compiled. And I promise I will not give away those twists. That is something, let me take a sidebar here that I will say. I know that I get excited when I'm talking about these books and when I'm giving my reviews or rants or whatever, but I make a very concerted effort not to spoil the twists or the main thing about the book, so having said that, let me step off my soapbox because I've gotten a comment or two about spoilers or whatever. So I try to be better about giving warnings, but I promise you this is going to be spoiler free. Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, first up, Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. This book has been made into a movie starring Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike. I think that's her name, Rosamund Pike. And wow. When I first started reading that book, I knew that it was a thriller or a mystery, and I'd heard that, it's this insane twist, but I just felt like something was already off because of how the main character, the main woman in the book, she was just portrayed as too perfect, right? So for those of you who don't know, I'll give you a quick synopsis. The book follows this married couple who, through past and present points of view, it starts off like they're this perfect couple. It was a meet cute type situation. They had this banter and this chemistry and everything was just lovely and everything. And they fell in love and got married. And she was from a very wealthy family. I think her mother and father, I think they had authored a book where it was based on her, like a kid's book, and it followed her through adolescence, which it was actually their daughter's real life. But anyway, her and her husband start having problems, right? And she goes missing, hence the title Gone Girl. And a lot of the information that we're getting is through a diary that she left behind about their life and what was going on. And so, as in most scenarios, real and in fiction, whenever something happens to a missing spouse, especially if it's a wife, the husband is always the number one suspect. And no different in Gone Girl. He becomes the villain, and it doesn't help that he's like a egomaniac. But when that twist comes and you realize what all was really going on, it does have your mouth hanging open because it just leads you to wonder who the real sociopath was, okay? And that's all I'm gonna say about that. But Gone Girl, if you have not read that, you must have been living under a rock for the last, what? I don't even know. Has it been almost a decade since that book has been out? It is really good. I highly recommend that if you're looking for a book that is gonna have a big twist. Defending Jacob by William Landay. And this has also, coincidentally, been turned into, it wasn't a movie, it's a series. And I watched it on Apple TV. So I'm pretty sure that they keep stuff on there. So if you're interested, if you've read the book, you may want to check out the TV series. And I know it starred Chris Evans, Captain America. But I cannot remember the mother on the show. I'll have to put her name up or whatever. But just imagine you are a father who, you're a high-powered attorney, and you put away bad guys, and you're living in this quaint community, of affluent people. Everybody respects you and, your family. And then a girl goes missing and they end up finding her body. She's deceased. And your teenage son becomes the number one suspect. Hence the title, because his son's name is Jacob, and he's having to defend Jacob, against all these allegations in this town and everything. And in this book, the plot twist comes, and most of the books, the plot twist comes either at the end or close to the end. But in this book, it came pretty much close to the very end. And my mouth is still hanging open, with how that one ended. But it goes through just this thing where, as a parent, you have the biggest question you ask yourself, especially if allegations are brought forth against your child, because I feel like as all parents, there are some cases where most parents, they know who their children are, literally, if they're bad people. They have seen it, they have witnessed it, they have been victims of it. But there are some cases where there are children who, even to their parents, they present one side and there's someone else totally different outside. It's just a matter of whether or not which side the parent chooses to believe. And that's kind of what was going on in Defending Jacob. The Silent Patient, one of the first mystery books I've read, that got me on the path of wanting to read more books like that. One of the first books I reviewed on the channel. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides or Michaelides. I always butcher his name, I'm sure. But that one made me change when I'm reading, to pay more attention. And I'm like, every little thing, I'm like, okay, that might be a clue. That might be a clue. And it also made me not discount anybody being capable of anything, okay? Because in that book, there's a woman who is accused of killing her husband quite brutally. She doesn't remember any of it, right? And the only thing I can't remember about that book, I know that I don't know if she became nonverbal after that or if she just refused to talk, but hence the title, The Silent Patient. There was this psychiatrist working with her because, the authorities and everybody, they're trying to figure out what happened here. She's committed, right, after, to an asylum after this, and he goes and he's her therapist and he's trying to figure out, what happened, but she's silent. She's not talking about what happened. And I just can't remember if, what made her become silent. Like I said, if it was by her own choice or if something happened to her voice. Something I can't remember. But I do remember quite literally when I got to the twist in that story, closing the book and just staring blankly, for a minute or two, how did I miss that? How? And sometimes when I read books like that, it's because the author has duped me, or duped the reader rather. And they never even had that person in the story, or they were mentioned one time. They never were a part of the, plot or what was going on. And those kind of stories I cannot stand. But in this particular book, The Silent Patient, it was right under our noses the whole time. So it just makes that particular twist just makes you question your own intelligence and your own ability to pay attention. It was a really good twist. Okay, Stranger in the Lifeboat by Mitch Albom. Now, I know that, this probably is not even considered a mystery or a thriller or a suspense type book. Because most of Mitch Albom's book, they're like fables, right? They're like more spiritual, they lean towards that type of genre and for those type of audiences. But with this book, there was a huge twist, like that made perfect sense in retrospect, but when it happened, I was like, no, I refuse to believe that. I started going back, like rereading passages, like, you mean to tell me, So basically what that particular book was about, and I'm sorry that for some of these stories, because I read them so long ago, I vividly remember the twist, but not so much the characters' names and all that. I just know that there was a guy who was working on a cruise liner, like, a big vessel that was set out to sea. And there were going to be all these like really important and famous people on there. And he kind of got caught up with some, people who were trying to make a statement. I don't know if it was something political going on or what, but they wanted to blow up the boat. And he was going to be their end to make that happen. But, at the last minute, he decided that's wrong. A lot of people might die. I don't want to do it. So even though he decides to pull out of it, some kind of way they were still able to get a device on the boat or whatever. And the majority of the story and it's a very short story. I don't know if I have the book up here or not, but it's a very short story. And the majority of the book takes place in the aftermath, because the boat does blow up, and I don't think that's a spoiler. No, I don't think that is, because stranger in the lifeboat, because there's a lifeboat that a lot of the people who have escaped or survived this explosion, they're out at sea, they're in the water, and they get this lifeboat, and they're all in the lifeboat. They're struggling to survive, with the rations that they have, and helping each other. And there you come to learn their various stories. And, because the main character was on the vessels, a lot of the people in the boat, he recognizes, right? But there's one person in the boat that everybody's kind of like, who are you? Where'd you come from? And that is a big part of the story and the conversations and things that are happening in the boat, when we get to the twist. It was very profound. And I was going to say something else, but I feel like that may give it away. If you are a person of faith, if you are a person who believes in a higher power, if you are a person who, again, likes twists and stories and things aren't always what they seem, you should definitely check that one out. Stranger in the Lifeboat by Mitch Albom. Okay, 2 more to go. Look Closer by David Ellis. This was one of those books that wasn't even on my radar. I don't know if it was a Kindle Unlimited or a Prime read or something, but I was kind of in a reading slump, and it was one of those, okay, let me read this. It doesn't seem like it's that long. The premise seems pretty good, and I'll tell you the premise. So basically what this story is about, there's this couple, and I did look this one up right before because I was trying to remember like the actual plot. I remember the twist, but I was like, how did they get involved in that? But there's this couple named Simon and Vicky. They are like, a well-to-do couple, well regarded in their community. Then a woman is found, murdered in their community. She's a wealthy socialite or whatever. And the spotlight is on Vicky and Simon. Like, one of y'all killed her. And just based on all the information and, their connection to this woman, the authorities, they have reason to believe that maybe they had something to do with her death. So there's a lot of police procedural type stuff in here. There's a lot of back and forth points of view. And as the police start to investigate more into Simon and Vicky, like, you begin to see that they aren't quite who they painted themselves to be or who the community thought them to be. And it's just like when the twist actually happened and you find out the reason for it, it was just so like cleverly done. And I feel like, you know, it was one of those things where once the twist was revealed, if you went back to read the book, everything would be right there, like so glaring and so obvious, but you're so wrapped up. And I think that's what happens. Let me take a sidebar here. When you're reading the mystery thriller books, a lot of times, I think there's a couple of things at play. Number one, I think sometimes we have convinced ourselves we know who did it. So we're not even looking at anybody else. We're trying to figure out, he did it, so let me see what was his motivation. You know, not even thinking that it could be, you know, another person. Or it's because we're so fixated, especially if you've heard that there's a twist in the book, you're trying to get to the twist and you're ignoring all these clues, right? So, yeah, I think that on second glance at that book, when they started at the end, because it was like that, it was like giving us flashbacks, like to remember that trash can scene, you know, that's where he did X, Y, Z, or remember the bathtub, that's where she did, and you're like, what? How did I miss that? But it was very subtly done. It was all very plausible. It made sense. The only thing I think I remember about that book that didn't make sense was there was a large sum of money given to somebody and what they did with it. I was like, are you for real right now? Are you for real? But despite that, you know, I like things that are cleverly put together. And this book, I will say this, which most books I feel like in this genre, there aren't just like random killings for the sake of killings or disappearances or kidnappings. They are always almost like based in some type of revenge. Okay. And that's what was going on mostly in Look Closer. And that, I feel like that title, I don't know if that was like a thing for the reader, like look closer when you're reading, or if it was meant for the police in the book. But either way, it was a lot of stuff that was missed because our attention was somewhere else. Look Closer by David Ellis. And then the last one that I have on my list, and like I said, this is by no means a conclusive list. There were a lot of books that I read that I felt like had good twists and, you know, things like that, but I feel like these were standouts in my opinion, right? And also because I didn't want to do like an hour-long, 2-hour-long video. The last one is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. My goodness. So in that book, this couple had won a trip to like go stay in like this really nice Airbnb, like in the countryside, you know. But it was during a snowstorm. That part, I was like, that's weird because I wouldn't have did that during a snowstorm. But anyway, they win this trip, and it's not so much like a trip of a lifetime or a chance of a lifetime. Like they're not going to some exotic island or some, you know, international location. But the thing that made it timely for them is that they were starting to have some problems in their marriage. So they felt like this would be a good time to be away from everything and everyone, kind of be isolated, where we're forced to talk and work through this stuff that's happening between us, right? And most of the story is told with, there's some back and forth, past, present, but it's told through like journal entries or diary entries of the wife. And that twist, I swear, that was one of those twists that, you know, this was one of my favorite books from whatever year I read. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but when I read that twist, I was like, this is how these books are supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to be feeling. You're supposed to be feeling like, you know, wow, you got me. You know, like, gotcha. It was a really good twist. And for the, I think that authors that are able to hide stuff in plain sight, like, they are diabolical. And I mean that in the very best way. Because a lot of times, you know, like I said, you have some authors that write in that genre, they are throwing people that they mentioned one time as the person, the perpetrator. They're, you know, coming up with some implausible reason why this person you've been rooting for is now the villain, you know. And I think it's because of their lack of ability to really craft a story where they can distract the reader from what's going on, but at the same time keep them focused on exactly what they want you to focus on. And that's what I feel like Alice Feeney did in Rock, Paper, Scissors. You get so caught up with I think you get caught up with a couple of things, because there was some weird stuff happening at this house where the couple ends up going. So now you're like, okay, maybe this book is truly about, like, is there somebody in the house? Is it a ghost? You know, what's going on with that? And then you're also reading through the wife's diary, and you're trying to figure out, well, what led them to this? What happened in their marriage? They seemed like they were so happy, you know? So you're so focused on those things that you're like not looking at the obvious. And because when you go back, you're like, you know, it was there all along. It was there all along, you know? Like I said, I love books like that. I mean, it does make you feel like, but at the same time, it's like you have to kudos to the author for that. So yeah, those were just some of the books that I have read in recent times that I feel like had some of the best plot twists. Let me know if you've read any of the books. Let me know in the comment. And if I left a book off that you think has an incredible plot twist that maybe I haven't read, please let me know in the comments, because I'm always, you know, up for adding books to my never-ending TBR. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you like this video and go ahead and take this opportunity to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day. Bye.